It's about halfway down. Okay. Probably the last sentence. This money, while placed in the public stewardship of IDA, is private sector contribution funding. Now, does this board consider the money that we give to people private sector money, or is it citizens' money?
This is private sector contribution funding.
I know it, but I've heard that it's not the citizens' money, that it's private sector money, and these rules don't apply because it's not the citizens of Hardee County's money.
Can I address that?
Yeah, sure.
We have an economic development element in our comp plan, and it simply compels mining companies to take a good hard look at the post-mining scenario relative to the permitting process and come up with a plan that will demonstrate that we can have some type of economic recovery. When the economic development element of the comp plan was debated relative to the South Fort Meade extension agreement, Mosaic chose, at the end of the day, to make or to entrust their economic development stewardship to the Industrial Development Authority of Hardee County. They were quite specific that this money was not to be in the hands of elected officials, not because they distrust elected officials, but because they wanted to make sure with absolute certainty that the money moved into economic development. It was never allocated for the general public good. It wasn't allocated for roads. It wasn't allocated for schools or hospitals, because the precipitating cause for the money is economic development. The Industrial Development Authority was selected as the entity to receive that money because it was very important that that the money go to a board in which the BOCC could not impose its will.
I agree with all that.
And if those circumstances changed, I can assure you that someone, Sierra Club, someone would file a lawsuit and say that if the basis for the permit was issued because the BOCC got money, it would have been peddling a permit. And I don't think any of us would want to have that happen in this community. So really the burden nobody's ever discussed here is that the obligation is on the IDA to prove to Mosaic that it can produce meaningful economic development recovery in Hardee County. And you know, this is going to be a pretty tough task. And we're never going to get there if we can't all get on the same page and have the same level of understanding of those points.
Well, I agree with all that, Bill. It's just my, you know, if the money is not considered citizens' money, then they have no right even to be in here to listen to this conversation.
The money is Mosaic's money, and Mosaic is entrusting it to the IDA to provide economic development stewardship.
Once Mosaic gives the money to the clerk, it's not Mosaic's money anymore. If I give you a Christmas present,
the money never goes to the clerk. The money comes directly to the IDA.
Okay, it's got the IDA on it on the check.
Comes directly to the IDA.
It's not BOCC. It doesn't go to the court.
No. No.
Okay, then these people have no right to be in here. Then
Well,
we shouldn't have a public meeting, right?
Well, I'm just telling you that the disbursement is directly to the Industrial Development Authority of Hardee County.
Okay.
And I
was told that it went through the BOCC to the clerk and us.
I think there is ambition for some for it to go through the clerk.
Okay.
Let me offer.
I was wrong.
It needs to be said.
Well, I'm trying to find out. I give up.
Don, let me take a stab at answering that. The money, I think, is actually, if I'm not mistaken, come by wire transfer.
But it goes to the IDA.
It goes to the IDA. The IDA has cut back. The agreement called for $500,000 to the BOCC, and that then there is a check written from the IDA to the BOCC for the 500. Is the way that's administratively handled. I'm going to try to restate what Mr. Lambert said in a different way. The public does have a right to be here. It's a sunshine board. It's a public meeting. All of this, the economic development element of the comp plan, when it's adopted, is for the benefit and good of the public. It's the reason it is there is for the very purpose of attempting to accomplish economic development in this community, which will ultimately benefit everyone who lives here. That's so. When the money hits, governmental accounting standards get triggered, as Mr. Carter will tell you, and you know, the financial requirements, all that stuff are there. It is, in my opinion, I'm going to say something a little different than what Bill just said. In my opinion, it is public money. But it's public money with strings tied to it by way of an agreement with Mosaic. And it comes in and it said, this is how these funds are to be used. That was part of the agreement. It's not out there for any other purpose. I've heard in one conversation with a citizen, the opinion stated that this money ought to all be turned over to the Board of County Commissioners so that property taxes and special assessments could be reduced or eliminated. Okay? That was said.
I've heard that.
That's not what the agreement was about. And that agreement, when it was negotiated with Mosaic, Bill nailed it on the intent, was exactly accomplish economic development with these funds. If you deposit it with the Board of County Commissioners, the whole thing, the political pressure would be insurmountable to do exactly what we've heard said, reduce property taxes and special assessments. It would, I think the idea, I may have been the one that said it, was I would not want to be a county commissioner with $42 million sitting in the bank over a 10-year period and have to take all the phone calls about how much property tax relief everybody wants and that sort of thing. So,
especially after the $42 million runs out.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then it's kind of like a haircut. It's hard to put back on, right? So it's hard to go back up with the tax rate after you've eliminated it, et cetera. So it's public money, in my opinion. It's public money. Citizens have a right to ask questions, what have you. But it is public money with private strings, for lack of a better word, because it is a private sector contribution. And by agreement, it was spelled out how that money was to be spent. And but the terms are very broad. Loan, grant, various things that can be used for under the Mosaic agreement. So, that's my 2 cents on the issue. It's a little bit different take on it than Bill's, but it's I think for the most part the same. At the end of the day, it is public money. It gets accounted for as public money in the financials, but it just has private sector strings tied to it.